outrageous falsehoods, but to the bizarre self-assurance with which they are pronounced. We were told crowds were bigger than they were, that the sun shone when it didn't, that Trump won in a landslide, and that was just in the first few days after his election. Since then, our political discourse has become even more polluted with arrogant indifference to truth. Most of us have probably felt at some point or other that it can't get worse. And then it does. All this highlights another reason our Socratic question is pressing. It is pressing because how we go about believing has a direct effect on what we believe. If we approach the question of whether to believe that climate change is real or that vaccines cause autism with our minds already made up, we will get an answer that reflects ourselves more than the truth. But more than that, if we become convinced that those who answer differently are also approaching the question with minds made up, we may begin to feel that the whole enterprise is bankrupt. We may begin to listen to those who tell us that everyone is entitled to their alternative facts, that all news is fake news, and social media simply weaponized information. We may begin to think, with Camus, that dialogue and personal relations have been replaced by propaganda or polemic. In other words, the dogmatic arrogance we see in our political discourse may be due to our belief in our tribe's infallibility, or it may be due to the fact that we've simply punted on truth and embraced power as the measure of our success. These reflections suggest that our Socratic question is really about our attitudes toward truth, both in life and in politics. How we should approach truth in politics is a problem with a long history. The current political situation with the presidency in the United States, or the recent presidential election in Brazil, or national movements in Hungary, Austria, and even Great Britain, only serve to bring it into bold relief. The resolution of those situations, whatever that may turn out to be in each case, will not make the underlying problem go away. The more we come to think that tribal convictions are all that should matter, the more we arrogantly dismiss evidence for victory and truth for power, the weaker our grip on democracy becomes, no matter who is in power. Children raised in such an environment will absorb the lessons it gives them, that language is best used for hypocrisy and confusion, and democracy is for fools. As Arendt put it, the result of a consistent and total substitution of lies for factual truth is not that the lies will now be accepted as truth and the truth be defamed as lies, but that the sense by which we take our bearings in the real world is being destroyed. It is tempting to think that these problems can be handled with technical, policy-driven solutions, reimagining our digital platforms, or passing new legislation, or teaching people more facts about civics. And without a doubt, those things are terribly important. But at the end of the day, dealing with our attitudes toward truth and conviction won't be solved just by teaching people more facts when we don't agree on what counts as a fact. The problem of how to deal with the spread of dogmatism and the politics of arrogance is not a technical problem. It is a human problem. If we want to solve it, we have to change how and what we value. We must change our attitudes. An attitude is an explicit or implicit mental evaluation that we make of the world around us. It is a frame of mind, a kind of positive or negative mental orientation. Attitudes have been much discussed in social psychology for over a century, and in philosophy long before that. The 17th and 18th century Scottish philosopher David Hume might have called them sentiments. And scientists since Freud have warned us that the mental attitudes driving us are often ones we would consciously disavow and be embarrassed to find ourselves holding. Our attitudes matter for how we relate to the world, to one another, and to ourselves. You might think the idea that really matters in our polarized political landscape is civility. But while I have nothing against civility, except when be civil is used as code for shut up, I am concerned with something more fundamental. Civility marks a social norm, a baseline of appropriate social conduct. But how we act is the result of how we think, what we believe and therefore think we know. So if we want to understand our uncivil behavior, we must start with our attitudes toward our beliefs. Belief informs action, both within and without politics. Whether we cooperate or interfere with someone, whether we enact a policy or protest against it, who we vote for and why, all depend on what we believe. And it is important to understand not only those beliefs.